Hello again, everyone. I'm very honored and happy to be joined on the stage by Ai Weiwei, one of the great and most politically engaged artists of our time. Weiwei, perhaps let's begin in Greece, as we are in Greece. Your visit to Lesbos and then to the Idomeni camp on the Macedonian border at the height of the refugee crisis made an enormous impression on you and led you down various artistic avenues. Could you describe that experience, how it impacted you, and why it led you to produce these works?
Well, 2015, by July, I get my passport from authority from China. So by the end of the year,
Before that, you couldn't travel.
No, I cannot travel.
Yeah.
I was in house arrest for 4 or 5 years, and that year, by the end, I traveled to Lesbos. The reason is to trying to really see what's going on, because you hear so much from the news. And I brought my son, my girlfriends. We're standing on the shore and to see the first boat approaching. And then from that moment, day and night, we see boats coming all the time.
I mean, the boats often were just small rubber dinghies or...
Yeah, it's almost unthinkable. They can pass an ocean with this kind of rubber boat with air in there, always overcrowded, 70 or 100 people. And they come down. When they come down, you're really surprised. It's a lot of children, maybe 30, 40% children, women, and elderly people. So that moment I said, this is unthinkable situation.
Yeah.
Even I come from a communist society, this is still some situation I never expected. They come to Europe, and you can see they are not really welcome here. Even Greece has showed a great generosity. The Lesbos people let them come up.
Yeah.
But still, there's no hope. And so I decided to make this movie. That movie took me a year-long journey to 40 different camps all over the world. And just my curiosity, want to see who they are, what they made them to make this decision to leave their home.
And what did you conclude? I mean, people often say that, why do refugees really have to leave? I think my experience meeting refugees is that you don't leave because you have a choice. You leave because you've run out of choices. What did you find? And did you make the movie because, as you said, it's on TV? Did you think somehow people were not fully aware of the dimensions of the crisis?
I think we hear the number as
abstract number.
Yeah, 68 million people,
right.
Or 68.5 million people. Then we hear the number every 2 seconds. There's one person have to be forced out or their home.
Yeah.
And so during our conversation, would be thousands already being forced out of their home. As a common sense, nobody left their home, no matter it's poor or how remote, they will stay at their home because it's language, neighborhood, habit. Nobody leaves their home, except you have to leave. You have to protect your life or your children's life.
One of the works you made out of this experience, apart from the movie, was the piece Laundromat. And in Laundromat, as I understand it, you basically took all the, and anyone who's been into a refugee camp sees all these items of clothing often dirty, that have just been kind of hung up or abandoned. Anyway, you took all these clothes and you took thousands of them. You washed them, and you created this piece called Laundromat. Why did you wash them?
Well, first we collect all those clothes from Idomeni.
Yeah.
It's abandoned clothes by refugees when they have to move somewhere else. Those are clothes when they come to Idomeni from Syria or Afghanistan or Iraq. It has been with them for a long time. You know, that's maybe last belongings they grabbed before they leave their home.
Right.
But it's dirty, it's salty, it's no place to wash it. They have to throw away. But
they've been wearing these clothes day after day.
Oh yeah, the shoes and the clothes.
Yeah,
So I feel pretty sad after staying in Idomeni for so long to see those belongings just have to be abandoned again. So I said, maybe we just collect them. I don't know what to do with them.
Yeah.
But they're so dirty and smelly, and I said, first thing we have to wash it. For the reason, I think those clothes just like human being, it has dignity, you know. It's fabric, you know, it's with all kind of design patterns on it. It's just like a normal people. So we iron it, hanging them, and photographed each of them. Put in record and to put like a market like you know, this kind of clothes in stores and showing it in museums, like a Qatar museum or in Soho in this art gallery. So people first time when they see them, this is just like clothes you're hanging at home. Right. Children's clothes, women's skirt, but then you understand this is very different.
It's about purging the past and beginning something new?
It's urgent past, but it's not really beginning of something new. It stays there, and yeah.
You in your life have been dehumanized. You know what it's like to be dehumanized. You've been described by Chinese authorities as a deviant, and you spent more than 80 days basically in isolation. This experience of your own dehumanization, do you think it gives you a particular empathy with the dehumanized?
I think in my case, I think to be associated with those people who has no voice is not a choice. It's where I belong to. And I can discover myself in those people, and I can be identified with those people. So there's no boundaries, or it's very easy for me to be associated with people like that.
Why then is it so hard for millions of people, even whole societies? Why is it so hard for others to identify with and associate with these people? You live in Germany, you live in Berlin. We have this phrase now, Merkel's migrants. And Angela Merkel is the favorite target of right-wing anti-immigrant parties everywhere who say, you know, these are people who just want to create Islamic states or rape women or steal and infect our societies. For you, it's very easy to identify. For a lot of humanity, apparently it's not. How do you explain that to yourself?
I think first I don't know for what purpose many politicians always use the fear to make some kind of to gain some kind of support. So to scare the mass or to develop that kind of fear, to separate people, to say we are all different, is always a strategy in the history. So that kind of strategy, all those tragic moments we can remember in the history. And the human has a very short mind about history. We all understand what happened in past, just decades ago. Those unbelievable things happened. But it seems we disassociate with our past. We don't really want to say as human or as we have a potential to be very mean, to be hateful,
to close in.
Not only to close in, but to really do damage to others, and to use some excuse and reason to separate the humanity.
Do you think that's an eternal human condition, or it can be changed?
I think that is part of a human nature. Have a tendency.
But you talk a lot about we're all one humanity, but you're describing two forms of humanity.
I think there's a potential to totally forget the past, and not to remember those lessons we have learned. So, but of course, if we talk about humanity, very essential idea is we all the same. We all created by some miracle, and we have one life, and we're supposed to have compassion and helping each other. So those are very, very essential qualities, but we have to repeatedly talk about. Human rights is not really profound, it's very essential idea. But if any generation not to talk about this, not even think that would be a struggle, then that would leave a space for bad things to happen, for disaster to happen. And it happens now, and also in the future, it will happen.
Tell me what went through your head during those 80 days in prison. Later you created this extraordinary, you had nothing, no notebook, no obviously camera or anything, but you created this remarkable diorama of your prison cell, recreated it. And a lot of your work is about remembering, I think, the importance of remembering that you were just speaking about. But how did you fill your time? What did you think about? And how were you able subsequently to reproduce this in such a compelling way?
I was being detained in this very severe military type of jail. It's a secret. Even the people detains me doesn't know where the location is. They will never.
You disappeared.
I disappeared, and then also the people, the military soldiers, they don't know where the location is.
Yeah.
They've been secretly sent to there. So the most severe situation I can remember is not brutality or bad treatment, but rather you're totally cut off from a communication. You have no sense what happens outside, and the outside doesn't know where you are. I think that is so important. Once you've been isolated like that, you have no sense in relate to any kind of reality. That's almost like you're already dead. You're living dead person.
Yeah. Does that induce a kind of panic?
It creates panic. Physically, after a while, you don't have something to memorize. It destroys your structure of thinking. You don't want to even think about the past.
Because in theory, it could be endless.
Oh, yes. And also, you would listen to their, whatever they ask you to do, because there's no reason not to do it. You're totally isolated. So that is...
So how did you cling to your humanity?
I still have to think they're human being. Of course, they're not a machine. Any interrogator, any soldier standing in front of you, you always think they are human beings. They have the same kind of need. They have a past. They're eager to have some freedom. So I established a small communication with them. It's so absolutely necessary.
Right.
And also, those soldiers, for them, it's very precious to use some special skill to communicate with me, even they are being watched by, cameras, and we still made some kind of breakthrough.
So that was a human contact.
I think that's human contact. Actually, that kind of contact made us as human. Without those contact,
Yeah.
we are not human anymore.
Yeah.
So communication, free of expression, even at the very limited conditions, still is absolutely necessary for a human being.
Weiwei, democracy is our theme here and has been our theme over the past couple of days. China is rising, continuing to rise. Xi Jinping has offered China as a model for the world. And of course, it is not a democracy. It's a country where somebody can disappear for 80 days. It's a country without freedom of speech. It's a country with enormous accomplishment that has ushered hundreds of millions of people out of poverty over the last 3 decades. So how should we think about China? How worried are you by the ascendancy of a country that retains many autocratic characteristics?
China is a new phenomenon, a huge state. For the West, it's fast-growing, seems have a lot of advantage because it's a state capitalism.
Yeah.
But we always have to remember, as Karl Marx, the grandfather of communism,
Yeah.
once said, the personal freedom is the precondition for social, freedom.
Yeah.
But China, after almost 100 years of struggle, never achieved a bit about the personal freedom, and going further and further till today. It's a state doesn't trust its own citizens, never allow them to have a platform, not even to say election, but even platform to have a free press or even smallest platform for discussion. It's a state totally authoritarian, controlled by a single party system, no independent judicial system, no any kind.
Free press.
Not only free press, not even NGO or any religious practice.
And it's getting worse under Xi,
It's getting much severe.
Yeah.
So the only thing you would argue is why they're so scared. Why such a state will be so scared after being in power for 70 years? Then the conclusion would be their structure have some problems insolvable. Any little change would make the whole thing collapse. They clearly aware of that, but they have no engineer to understand how to make change, to make possible change, to leading to the nation to a safe ground.
So is its rise a threat to the world? The free world in particular.
It could be, because this is a huge nation. It's 1/6 of the world population. It's really big part of a human condition. But it's still very unstable, very unpredictable. And definitely,
You think it's very unstable?
I think it's totally unstable because there's no establishment that can make the state self-improving. Any state, any human being have to have some kind of progress politically, but not in China.
Do you think as this huge middle class emerges that the demands for more representative government will become so insistent that some kind of change in a genuinely democratic direction is, if we look at the next, Xi Jinping in his speech to the 19th Party Congress, he projected forward to 2050. That's 32 years from now. And he projected a fully developed, very powerful, fully economically developed and powerful state by the middle of the 21st century. But he said nothing about any kind of democratization. Or do you think that's possible?
I think that's impossible.
Okay.
I think if you don't trust your people, the bigger or stronger you become, the more danger there will be. Because simply that structure has no foundation. You know, if the state, or the power, or the value of the state, and not benefit each individual's life, so that only become a monster. So,
yeah. Before the refugees, one of the disasters that drew a lot of your attention was the Sichuan earthquake. And again, you collected the backpacks of all these school children who had been killed. You made the mural in Berlin. And again, you confronted authorities who were trying to get the world to forget, obscure, airbrush this disaster. And the artist remembers, the artist sets it down and doesn't allow that to happen. So you've really been consistently subversive in China, right?
yes, but maybe also subversive in the West.
Yeah.
Because we are dealing the global situation is no longer China or under the West.
Yeah.
We become there's one potential problem there is we forget as one. The whole world, even we have all kind of conditions, but eventually as one. So that I think shows a bigger problem in the way.
How do you find living in Berlin, city I lived in for 3 years, in a country that has grappled with the quandaries of memory and remembering for a long time now? When we were talking out there, you were talking of walking around Berlin and seeing these small plaques recalling a child deported, an old woman deported. In a way, it's these small pieces of memory that, as human beings, impact us the most.
Yes, if I think some artwork would really stop me when I'm walking, are those little
Plaques.
plaques which writing down who has been taken away, the name, or which year they were born, and how old when they been sent to Poland. And those things, it's very basic information, but you try to imagine on those very broad daytime or evening, you know, those families has been forced out for their home and taken on the street in front of all other people. Everybody knows it. Those people will never come back.
Why do you think so many people in history are bystanders? They know that evil is being perpetrated, and they stand there and they watch their neighbors being escorted off to their deaths.
That is very hard to understand.
And they don't react.
It's very hard to understand. I was went through Cultural Revolution. The whole nation is like crazy, like wild. My father, as a poet, has to clean those toilets, has to be insulted, has been beaten. We have to live under this kind of inhuman conditions. But people would not even come to say, you're a nice man, you have been wrongly treated. So because that, you have to really rethink about human nature, you know, who we are. Because we are very selfish, or because we are so easy to be scared.
Or very afraid.
Yeah, afraid.
To rock the boat, to say anything.
It's true. I think that is very common. We have to we have to really accept that is truth in the history. So that's why we have to constantly fight to defend those very essential rights and the freedom of speech, freedom of to be associated with anyone, any ideas you want to. Without that kind of protection, the human society can be really evil.
There are rumors that you will soon return to the United States. You lived in New York for 10 years in the 80s. Are the rumors true? And what is leading you to depart from Germany?
I think any rumors always have true.
Always have truth.
Yeah, there's no rumors completely wrong. Yes, I speak English, even it's quite broken English, but I don't speak German.
Yeah.
You know, even after 3 years being German, I fully appreciate their generosity to accept me. But still, I have to think to bring my son to an English-speaking nation so he can have education, can be easily communicating with most people who speak English anyway. So I started looking from upstate New York. Maybe I find a piece of land I can walk. You know, now we live.
You mean a rural existence rather than a city existence?
Not the city.
Yeah.
New York City is quite exciting, but not for the old man like me.
Or an old man like me.
No, definitely not. We walk
I know exactly how you feel.
too slow on the street, you know. So
I'm going to throw this open in 1 minute, so if you have a question. If you do come to the United States, you'll be coming closer to President Donald Trump. What do you think of him?
I think only push me further from him. You know, I would have a more argument, you know. So it's like if I live in China, I become far away from China.
Right.
Now I don't live in China, I don't care that much.
Right. You've said the world is a sphere, there's no east and west. What did you mean by that?
I still talk about we have to think the border is not really the physical borders, but rather in our heart. We have to understand the humanity as one.
It's a good note to, yes, Liz has a question, and then the gentleman there.
Yes, hi, I'm Liz Alderman, the European business correspondent for the New York Times. It was inevitable that Roger would mention Donald Trump eventually in his conversation with you. And I was wondering, Donald Trump has also in his own way been challenging China very directly, mainly through this trade war that has been amplified even today with his decision to impose even greater tariffs on China. This is also obviously something that has posed a great challenge to the Chinese leadership. Do you think that this is a good approach or a bad approach to opening China, as he says? And what do you think could be the possible consequences, political consequences in China as well as for the Chinese people eventually?
The question was that President Trump has taken a fairly aggressive stance toward China. He's imposing tariffs and so on. And so he's challenging the Chinese leadership. Is that a good approach or a bad approach?
I think it's approach really naturally what happened. You know, this is seems in the old saying we said in a mountain will not allow two tigers to be in one area. So certainly U.S. has to, for any nation, they have to find especially U.S. have to find their enemy, the state policy. And certainly China would have a potential threat because this kind of disorder for this so-called new world order or globalization. So this kind of struggle will always there, only when it happens and to what scale and what it will benefit the global politics, both parties will have a very different perspective about world order. So,
Do you think the US model or the Chinese model will prove stronger?
I think both model, if we talk about model now, would have a lot of struggle. I think U.S. model already shows a strong problem when the capitalism developing in such a way. And that danger is very strong, I should say, if we don't clearly understand, then there will be a huge potential problem. But for Chinese side, they never really established any theory or ideology.
Right.
So it's big mess, and I don't think the threat is that big.
I can take, time is officially up, but I did say to that one gentleman that I would take a question. So I'm sorry, my apologies to everyone else. It's just, we've run out of time.
We're always out of time.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm Dimitri Vasilakis. I'm a jazz saxophonist and composer, so I'm an artist. And this year I presented Jazz Democracy at the United Nations in New York. And I feel that in jazz, it kind of feels natural to us to communicate, to have mutual respect and understanding. And I wanted to ask you if you think that the arts in general and art activism can support movements and can help give solutions to the problems that you talked about, especially in China and also the refugee crisis. And on the other end, should modern governments and modern democracies support the arts more?
Did you get that? Should governments support the arts more, and can art faculties play a role in addressing some of the problems that were mentioned? I'm actually going to change my mind. Raphael had his hand up. Let's have your question. We'll just take them all together and then close. So, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'm Raphael Minder. I'm a reporter for New York Times. I was very happy to hear your comment about China being unstable, because it seems to be missing in lots of analysis that's done of China. I want to know if you think the change in China, which you're forecasting, can be a peaceful transition, or do you think that we are at a point where it's going to look much more messy, more like an Arab Spring version happening in China?
So which question?
Okay,
should I
start with
answer?
the last one maybe, and then the yeah.
I think because China is really single-powered society, a very strong communist, this kind of structure with 80 million of communist members. If they want to make a change, that is possible. But seems they're dare even to talk about the words change. In China, even the words compassion cannot be mentioned. You know, my musician friends made a composition, a music. One part is about compassion. That music cannot be even to be broadcasted. Or my human flow film cannot be shown in China only because my name. You know, so if with the state, with this kind of allowance, with any sense of a change, then only leading to a violent change. This is absolutely only outlet they can have is to have violent change. But I'm sure there's no possibility for violent change because the army and the police really belongs to the party. So then the only thing is internally from possible oppositions, which is almost unlikely. So it's very hard to say what will make that change happen. But in the theory, it should happen any moment, because it comes to a moment the society have no trust or any sense of credibility about the power. So, even you talk about the middle class, the people sending their children to study in London, in Paris, in New York, they're shifting the money out, and there's no sense of trust. Anybody feels insecure. That's the problem. And come back to the art.
Yeah, art faculties, and should governments give more money to the arts?
If I tell the truth, I will be hated by art community. So should I keep talking? I think art should fight for its own dignity. Forget about the government. The government never really support a real art. So I think artists have to have their own voice, to have their own rights, no matter government support or not. The government will never support me. That's only that because that they made me as Weiwei. So.
Thank you, Weiwei.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all very much.